Namaskar, everybody. It's a great tribute to the city of Hyderabad that you organize a samvad, a dialogue of this nature. It reflects the culture of tolerance, reflects a culture of inclusiveness, and most of all, culture of values. These are all elements which are fast disappearing from our society. So, I must say, hats off to you, the Hyderabadis, for being part of this fantastic event, this movement, and I very warmly congratulate you and wish you good luck. I also, of course, must congratulate the Shankar Jaikishan or Lakshmikant Pyarelal behind this movement, both Ajay and Vikram. It's really a remarkable effort on your part, and really hats off to you for what you are doing. Keep it up, and I have no doubt that soon this will transform into a very beautiful grassroots movement where you may be perhaps able to involve all people from all walks of life, not only people who are literate like us, but people who are illiterate and who have a greater stake in the survival of democracy in this country and its well-being. So I congratulate you both, and also the entire orchestra or all those thinkers behind you with you, and I wish you all lots of good luck. Ajay has created a bit of a dilemma for me, because amongst the interesting topics that he thought of or spoke about, which Manthan has been debating about, was sex. And I was really amused that on a drab and a serious topic like Constitution, how am I going to keep the audience really glued to their chairs? But anyway, I will try and do it as beautifully as I can. Dr. Mallika Sarabhai today gave us an outstanding performance. But behind that performance was a message. And that message really is what takes me to my topic, the status of women in our society. 65 years down the road, we are still not able to give equality to our women. And virtually in every walk of life, and I can fairly admit that even in the Supreme Court of India, women are not having a place of pride which they really deserve. Unfortunately, it's a male-dominated society, and nothing is being done by us. We all must plead guilty to that, to really break this barrier and to make sure, because I do believe that, and I've seen, I can speak for my profession, that women who enter my profession today are extraordinarily gifted. And I have no doubt that they will do a great job in ensuring that the administration of justice and rule of law remains in safe hands in times to come. So her debate is really the starting point. Constitution, a lost religion. Why did I think of this? When Ravi and Ajay asked me what topic I had in mind, I was perplexed. I don't know whether many of you know or not, but I am a proud, permanent pessimist when it comes to this nation. I have been a lawyer for 37 years. I have seen public life. I know my judiciary inside out. I deal with corporate world on a daily basis. I deal with litigants from all walks of life. And I can tell you one thing, that there is very little to hope for this nation. I may sound little unacceptable to many of you, because I know optimism is something which all of us must share. But I have very serious reservations about that optimism. The reason why I feel that, and this is what this topic is going to be important, that this country unfortunately has been hijacked from us by these few thousands of people. They may be politicians, bureaucrats, police officers, judges, professionals like me, and many other crony capitalists, they have virtually hijacked this nation from our hands. They are the ones who today, command, and they really live lives which are totally unreal in our world, leaving us, the common people, to fend for ourselves. So it's something which really is troublesome, because billion plus people, almost 50 crore plus, are living below poverty line, virtually like cats and dogs, and nobody really cares about them, nobody really bothers about them. One of the single most factors for this state of affairs is our ignorance of Constitution of India, the constitutional philosophy, the constitutional ethos, and most of all, constitutional morality. A nation really needs noble ideas, capable citizens to achieve them, and a sound pragmatic code of conduct, the Constitution, Bandaran. Like us in families, and fortunately the family as a unit has survived well in this country, we have values, we have our disciplines. We don't have a written code of conduct in our families. It's understood. It is understood because we are all brought up to really understand what those values are, what that culture is, what that discipline is. But a nation needs that document in writing. India was born with a dream, described brilliantly in this poem by Gurudev, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not broken up into fragments of narrow domestic laws, where words come from depth of this, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where mind is led forward by into even widening thought of action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Constitution of India is the greatest gift that our forefathers who gave us the freedom gave it to us. It's a document solidly prepared which defined by 300 men and women constituting the Constituent Assembly, which was further assisted by drafting committee headed by one of India's greatest citizens, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The drafting committee set for 141 running days to prepare this brilliant document called the Constitution of India. The Constituent Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, spent 3 years debating. And I can tell you, if you read the Constituent Assembly debates, you will realize what was the level of these men and women. It is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And I don't think for next 1,000 years, India will be able to produce men and women of that stature. If Gita, Bible, Quran, Guru Granth Sahib, and the Buddhist and the Jainist texts are worshipped by us for centuries, Constitution of India deserves to be added to that list to inculcate the art of worshipping it. But we sit today, India is a nation stricken with poverty, inequality, illiteracy, intolerance, hatred, and most of all, very poor governance. This is largely due to our abject failure as a nation to adhere to the constitutional morality and its philosophy. On 17 September 1949, Dr. Ambedkar described the Constitution during a debate in the Constituent Assembly. And I quote, "Constitution is a fundamental document. It is a document which defines the position and power of the three organs of the state, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. It also defines powers of the executive, the powers of the legislature as against the citizen, as we have in our chapter dealing with fundamental rights. In fact, the purpose of Constitution is not merely to create the organs of the state, but to limit their authority, because if no limitation was imposed upon the authority of organs, there will be complete tyranny and complete oppression. The legislature may be free to frame any law, the executive may be free to take any decision, and the Supreme Court may be free to give any interpretation of the law. It would result in utter chaos, unquote. Our Constitution stands on 4 pillars: justice, social, economic, and political; liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship; equality of status and opportunity; fraternity, assuming dignity of individual and assuring dignity of individual; and unity and integrity of the nation. By Dr. Ambedkar's words on 25th November 1949 were very prophetic when he said, and I quote, "Because I feel, however good a constitution may be, it is sure to turn out bad, because those who are called to work it happen to be a bad lot. The factors on choice of working of organs of the state depend are the people and the political parties they will set up as their instruments to carry out their wishes and their politics. Who can say how the people of India and their parties will behave? It is therefore futile to pass any judgment upon the Constitution without reference to the part which people and their parties are likely to play." Unquote. How true these words are. Can we not today see what is happening around us? We, the people, and we, our political parties chosen by us, all seem to have failed us in ensuring these constitutional goals. Can it be said that our Constitution has succeeded with large-scale corruption, gripping every form of public life like cancer? Flagrant violations of cherished fundamental rights, ever-growing intolerance of religious, linguistic freedoms, serious curtailment of freedoms of speech and expression, and most of unacceptable killings of thousands of innocent men and women and children in massacres at regular intervals in the name of religion, or abject poverty of over 500 million people, while few thousands in power enrich themselves from national resources? The answer is for all of us to see all around us. Please remember, ladies and gentlemen, and these are the words of a song which I remembered when I was in college days. Beautiful words. Now is the time to set things right. Now is the time to set things right. We don't need a revolution. We just need to open our eyes. How right was Dr. Ambedkar? We, the people and our parties, are seriously lacking in what he expected us to do. Take, for example, governance. Executive has powers to govern, but those powers are hedged by rights conferred by citizens' fundamental rights. Article 14, and this is one of the most beautiful checks and balance in our Constitution. Article 14 strikes at arbitrariness, discrimination, and expects every government election to be informed by reason, to be informed by just cause. Unfortunately, the state has been distributing its largesse, whether it's coal, whether it's 2G, or whether any other largesse, giving out contracts, making employment of people in complete negation of what article really mandates the state to do. This is something which is very shocking. Yet, what do we find? All but pervasive arbitrariness. From appointing a police constable to government employee, to awarding a small contract of repairing roads, to coal and 2G allocations. This has diabolical effect, inefficiency, corruption, nepotism, favoritism, and irreparable harm to public interests. Adherence to single article, Article 14, single article, can bring so much good. Likewise, take Article 21, life and liberty of citizens. They are protected and cannot be taken away except in accordance with law. What has the state done in last 65 years to prevent large-scale massacres in which thousands of men, women, and children have been slaughtered by either us or with the connivance of the state? Beginning from 1969 Gujarat riots, 1980 Muradabad, 1983 Nelly in Assam, 1984 NT6 riots, 1989 Bhagalpur, 1990 ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandits, 1992 Bombay riots, 1993 Sopore killings, 2002 riots. It goes on. And add to this the killings and disappearance of thousands at the hands of the armed forces in Kashmir and Northeast in the name of preserving security of the state. Armed Forces Special Provisions Act is the single largest blot on our democracy. And I regret to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that the Supreme Court of India, which is the ultimate protector of the Constitution and the fundamental rights, upheld that law. It is a completely nonsensical law which gives a complete immunity for, actions of the armed forces, not just which are taken, but which are purportedly taken in the name of ensuring security of the nation. It really is something which is for us to ponder. The loss of human lives is mind-boggling. Plus, thousands remain in custody without trials, mostly on false charges and completely bogus investigations. If you have money, if you have power, you never face the jail. It's only those who are poor and who don't have power have to face the music of the law, which is the hard reality today. Now, this is completely negation of Article 21. This is something, has state and its officers been ever held to be accountable for this? And what really has failed? Take, for example, 1984 riots in Delhi. Not one person worth his salt from the ruling party in power at that point of time has been brought to justice. And everybody knows that one remark, that when bada ped girta hai, to dharti hilti hai, led to the riots which killed more than 15,000 innocent men, women and children. Look at 2002 Gujarat riots. Everybody, I can tell you, everybody is being set free on a daily basis by our courts. Out of those 2,000 plus killings of innocent people, 793 cases were only brought about by the police. Out of those 793 cases, it's not even more than 90 cases which have really faced the trial today. And out of 90, I would say more than 75% have resulted in acquittals. Now, it is really impossible for us to accept as a civil society that we can allow this kind of a situation to take place. I do remember that when 9/11 took place, and this is the maturity of a democracy, there was a greatest provocation like Mrs. Gandhi's killing or burning of a train in Godhra. But President Bush went to a mosque next day in Washington and assured the Muslim community that no harm will come to you on the soil of the United States of America. 2 people died, 2 Indians, a Patel in Florida and a Sikh in Arizona. In both cases, people were brought to justice instantly and they were given, appropriate sentences. And it's remarkable that when this Sikh gentleman this Patel gentleman was killed, sitting with him in a store was a Muslim gentleman, also from Gujarat. And when the appeal came up of the murderer in the federal court, this Muslim gentleman filed an affidavit supporting mercy for this American murderer, saying that instead of death sentence, it should be commuted to life imprisonment. And you will be surprised, unlike our courts, the federal court dismissed the appeal even after reading that affidavit by simply one sentence, saying that this country will not tolerate hate crimes. Now, here is an Indian, a Gujarati who's killed in the soil of United States. And look at how beautifully the justice system works. Here we are, thousands of our own people, in Delhi in 1984, in 2002 in Gujarat, and nothing happens. This is where we really have to realize that the constitutional framers have given us such beautiful rights. We have to make sure, if the judges don't hear, the civil society must shout, must cry out, and let judges know that you are not doing something right. Judges also, after all, power is loved by everybody. It is the same judiciary which during emergency in 1976 gave one of the most disastrous judgments in the history of India's constitution, where in ADM Jabalpur's case, the judges, and it included some of the finest judges, some of the best, most respected, like Justice Bhagwati, Justice Chandrachud, all these judges, Justice Chinnapareddy, they all agreed unanimously to say, except Justice H.R. Khanna, knight in the shining armor, that the fundamental rights can be suspended during emergency. So it is this kind of a judiciary which we are confronted with. We have to understand that. Why is this happening? Because we do not respect that every life is precious and must be protected in every sense. Judiciary which is entrusted with duty to protect those rights is either too slow or reluctant to intervene and do meaningful protection. Do judges of high courts and Supreme Courts really need to understand the import of Articles 226 and 32, which are designed to protect these rights? Can there be rights without a remedy? The constitutional framers were extremely conscious. So when they conferred on citizens' fundamental rights, they gave high courts and Supreme Court under Article 226 and 32 express powers to ensure that those rights are not violated by the executive or the legislature in any way. But the result is for all of us to see. Take Article 19(1)(a), freedom of expression and speech. Our executive, our political leaders, and most of all, our religious leaders, gurus, social organizations from across religious and society are so intolerant today that people are even afraid to speak out. Many arrests in recent years have told us to shut up. No democracy can survive if we curtail these rights. Vibrant democracies need vibrant voices. There is kind of collective dictatorship which seems to be overtaking us. Dr. Ambedkar called it a dictatorship in fact, while retaining democracy in form, and warned, if there is a landslide, look at this man in 1949, what's happening today in the country. If there is a landslide, the danger of second possibility becoming actuality is much greater. He called it a dictatorship, I call it a collective dictatorship. John Stuart Mill had once warned that those who are interested in maintaining democracy ought not to lay their liberties at the feet of even a great man, or to trust him with powers which enable him to subvert the institutions. Be grateful to those who give service to the nation. But as Daniel O'Connell had said, no man can be grateful at the cost of his honor. No woman can be grateful at the cost of her chastity. And no nation can be grateful at the cost of its liberty. Ambedkar had warned that for India, bhakti, or what may be called path of devotion or hero worship, plays a part in its politics, unequaled in magnitude by the part it plays in politics of any other country in the world. Bhakti, he says, may be a road to salvation of the soul, but in politics, bhakti or hero worshipping is a sure road to degradation and to eventual dictatorship. Look at the man. Look at these people. This is 70 years ago. Everything that he said becomes today so relevant, so meaningful. We are all shutting our eyes because we all want development. Which development? Economic development, so that we can drive our BMWs, Mercedeses, I also drive them, and enjoy the most comfortable lives, forgetting completely that the cost of this life or this development is too high. And none of us are willing to open our eyes to understand what that cost is. Similarly, take Article 19(1)(g), and this affects many of you sitting here, right to do business. India stands at number 140 in the World Index of Business Ease. 140. Isn't one great enterprising spirit not being killed by those in power for no reason except arbitrariness and corruption. This country has a history of trade for last 5,000 years. We don't need our governments to tell us what we have to do. We are all capable of doing it. They don't need to tell us. We don't need to. But the government will stifle us in every possible way. For everything that you do in business, you need a permit. A permit is nothing but a license for that bureaucrat or a politician to demand money. It is nothing else. And you just can't function. I see it all the time. Unless you are a crony capitalist, then of course everything is given on a red carpet. But if you are not, then your life becomes extremely difficult to do business. And that's why you have to give great credit to likes of Dr. Reddy's laboratory, who despite all these adversities have really proved themselves to be of a great company. These are the kind of people we have. And these are the kind of people who can take this country forward. The Infosys, the Wipro, etc., etc., etc. But we have today, what do we see today in the business world? What do we see on the platforms of CIIs, FICCI and ASSOCHAMs? Nothing but crony capitalism. Everybody stands up. Every year after budget, I like to generally see the comments of industry leaders, the so-called industry leaders. And not one of them, I swear to God, not one of them in last 36 years of my legal career has ever attacked government, minister, finance minister, be it Chidambaram or be it Mr. Jaitley, that Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Jaitley, you have not given us a good budget. Nobody says that. Because they want to get benefit. Next day, they praise him. Next day, they go to him and say, look, sir, my company has this problem. I need some loan. Why don't you pick up a phone and tell SBI chairman to sanction $1 billion loan sitting in Australia? And it will be done. So it's that kind of a situation. Terrible. How does a nation with billion plus people needing over 50 million jobs every year create them? How can it better life of its citizens without producing right goods for consumption? Equally, as a nation, we have done poorly on the front of social democracy. Political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base of it social democracy. What is social democracy? It means a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity. And these are not to be treated separately, but in a trinity. In politics, we have recognized principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. But on the social and economic front, we continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. Can India live with this contradiction for long? Fraternity, sense of common brotherhood of all Indians is increasingly diminishing. There is a beautiful story on this in the American history by James Bryce, and I quote, "Some years ago, the Protestant Episcopal Church was occupied at its triennial convention in revising its liturgy. It was thought desirable to introduce among short sentences prayer, a prayer for the whole people. And an eminent New England divine proposed words, 'O Lord, bless our nation.' Accepted one afternoon, the sentence was brought up next day for reconsideration when many people objected to the word nation as importing too definite a recognition of national unity, that it was dropped and instead there were adopted the words, 'O Lord, bless these United States.' So if the people of America could not feel that they are one nation, imagine India with such complete diversity in religion, caste, cultures, language. Fraternity can be a fact only when there is a nation, and without it, equality and liberty are completely meaningless. And what do we find today? Fraternity in every form being fractured every moment in irreparable way. If only those who have professed to lead us politically and more particularly socially know what fraternity is all about, we will have to pay a heavy price for dividing the nation so deeply. I am reminded of these very beautiful words in a song which came a couple of years ago. Runs very beautifully. ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे जहाँ में नफरत क्यों है, जंग है क्यों, तेरा दिल तो इतना बड़ा है, इंसान का तंग है क्यों. It's like that. We have made ourselves so, religiously intolerant, so small that we are just not able to see anybody else's good values. A point not to be missed is the status of minorities in the country. Constitution framers made express provisions to protect freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion to all. They also conferred fundamental right for protection of minorities, having a distinct language, script or culture of its own, and guaranteed right of religious or linguistic minorities to establish and administer educational institutions. These are provisions which have noble objectives and must be interpreted and applied liberally. Take, for example, St. Stephen's College in Delhi. Why is it that for last 65 years it's been one of the finest institutions in the country? We all today attack, certain religions or certain institutions. But, I never went, of course, to a convent-educated school. But they have produced some of the finest students in the country. They have done great service. But suddenly we are now realizing that it is a fashion to attack them by saying that they convert people. I have not known a single convent-going student who has been converted to Christianity in my life. So why is it that this is happening? What we find today, unfortunately, is a hardcore jingoism directed against these minorities. Remember, we have 8% scheduled tribes in the country and over 17% religious minorities. Can we not allow them space to maintain their cultures and beliefs? Would Mahatma Gandhi have been a happy man in today's India? Where rationalists and beef eaters are being targeted only for holding on to their beliefs? Dr. Ambedkar had warned while justifying, and this is a very serious issue. Dr. Ambedkar and the drafting committee were attacked very seriously when the draft constitution was presented to the Constituent Assembly, particularly on the provisions relating to minorities. So Dr. Ambedkar, when he rose on the final day before the draft constitution was adopted, he said that one of the issues on which my committee has been criticized is the provisions relating to minorities. And he justified it in such beautiful words. And look at how true they are today. He says, Muslims had a choice to leave India. Those who wanted to leave India have gone to Pakistan. But those who did not and have chosen to stay in India have decided to place their fate in the hands of the majority. He said that it is for the majority to ensure that they are assimilated in our culture, in our society. And he warned, and this is where it's very serious, he warned that minority can be an explosive force. And if the majority fails them, it will result into disastrous consequences. Now, this man speaks in 1949. He doesn't know about, today's India, today's hardcore politics based strongly on religions and fundamentalism and favoritism and casteism and whatever. But he knew what India is likely to face, the challenge. Do we shut our eyes to what is happening in the world today? Do we realize that from Western Europe and United States of America, over 25,000 men and women have joined Islamic State in Syria? Is it not our responsibility? We have fortunately had one of the finest, contribution by the minorities. Take our architecture, take our music, take our food, take our clothing, take our dance. Many things, has been contributed by them. And they have walked hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder in the freedom struggle. If you can remember names of Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru or Sardar Patel, there are many other names from amongst the minority community who really stood and supported the freedom struggle. Jinnah was just one of them. And Jinnah chose to create Pakistan, fair enough. So this is something which today we are increasingly forgetting. Just look at it. Nepal, virtually a Hindu state, last week, despite pressure by this country's government, refused to adopt a constitution to call itself a Hindu state, Hindu Rashtra. What does it matter, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, I am not religious, but of course, I worship God. I am afraid of God. I know that there is a force which has created this universe. But is religion not something to be done in our hearts, at our homes? Do we need to bring it in public life? Do we need to bring it in our IITs and IIMs or FTs and other institutions? Do we need to do this kind of things where every institution today, every institution is virtually, by every political party. It has nothing to do with X or Y. But every political party wants to destroy institutions of excellence created by our forefathers. And this is something where, the fraternity is increasingly diminishing in society. You are all living in a city which is blessed with culture, multicultural, inclusive society. Come to Ahmedabad. You will have, tears in your eyes. We live in complete ghettos. We live in complete ghettos. I dare say that even if Mr. Azim Premji wanted to buy a house in the society where I have a bungalow, nobody will sell him. And if anybody sold him, it will be reversed within 36 hours. Is this what we want India as a nation to be? But we are increasingly, and nobody wants to talk about it, much less resist it. This is what our forefathers said. No, we will not tolerate. We will give everybody a right. We as a nation, therefore, need to ponder on this very sensitive issue and restore it once and resolve it once and for all. We must be reminded of all times of the citizens that freedom by its nature implies limitations and restrictions. There is nothing called absolute freedom. Kavihan, there is a very beautiful saying. Kavihan arth akhar bal sacha, kartal tal, gatihin nat nacha. Dancer dances to the measure of clapping. Poet is bound by the significance of the words. When a nation attains freedom, it begins to bear a great responsibility on its shoulder. Good citizenship implies restrictions. Satyam prayut, priyam brayut, na brayut, satya priyam. Be truthful and sweet in speech, but do not speak out unpleasant truth. Our leaders, political and more social these days, speak unpleasant things, and most times not even truthful. Women should not wear jeans. Women should not be carrying mobile phones. I mean, is this the kind of a nonsense that we want to hear from our religious, political and social leaders? Is this what society is meant for? Is this why we have elected them or given them a place of pride? But they do it with impunity because we don't raise a voice to it. We don't use social media as they use it to get votes. We don't use social media to really challenge them, take them on. This is really a very serious issue for us to ponder. Our leaders, and as somebody rightly said, I think Ajay said it, or Vikram said it, that this causes irreparable scars, not just on the, in the minds of people. These scars are very, very difficult to fill. Nothing which you can do. Imagine, somebody who eats beef is being killed just because he is eating beef. What explanation can his widow be given by us as a nation that this is something which is not right? I'm a vegetarian, but I must respect everybody. I have no problem even if on the same table somebody eats beef with me. It's his choice. What's wrong about that? But we are all ignoring it. We are not speaking out. And these incidents are, increasing day by day, and they will become sometimes perhaps unbearable. Burke had said, one of the greatest political thinkers, it is easy to give power. It is difficult to give wisdom. Constitution of India gives us power, but we have not acquired the wisdom to stick to its principles, much less worship them. Aristotle, and this is thousands of years ago, was right when he said, and I quote, "The greatest of all means for ensuring the stability of constitution is the education of citizens in the spirit of the constitution." Unquote. Let us hope and pray that we move forward in this direction to make this Constitution of India our faith and our religion. Because if we don't, we can never make dream of Mahatma Gandhi a reality, in which he dreamt of independent India to be a place where there would be no poverty, no disease, no ignorance, and no depravity. He said, "Nahi daridra, kaun dukhi, no dina. Nahi ko abud, no lanchan hina." Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here, listening to me. I am really grateful to you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. We now open your session to a Q&A. And before I take up questions, I'd like to request that the lights in the auditorium be turned on. Ladies and gentlemen, raise your hands, and I would request all our volunteers here to please look at me and where I point and only give mics there. To all our members in the audience, one request, please keep your questions brief. Do not bring in belligerence. Thank you very much, and be focused. We begin with the first question that has come to be in writing, Mr. Dave. The question is media the biggest threat to Constitution today? Your comment on it. Sorry? Is media a biggest threat to Constitution today?
Not at all, far from it. I mean, don't judge media by times now. Media... Media is a truly antiseptic to every kind of a, disease that society suffers. And we need that antiseptic. If we didn't have media, and I must say it's a strong, vibrant media. Of course, there is misuse and abuse in every walk of life, including in media. But media is certainly, in fact, it's one of the real strong pillars of a surviving democracy.
There's one hand of a lady behind. Can we take that first question from the lady behind, right behind?
Sir, I am a trans woman, a transgender woman. I have been following you on YouTube, on national media and so on. I just want to clarify my understanding on your views on the debate that's going on criminalizing marital rape.
Well, it's a difficult issue, but I would definitely say that, look, even in a marriage, every partner must have a freedom of choice. And to me personally, I think if law were to be brought about criminalizing rape even in a marriage, it would neither be unconstitutional nor improper. So I think that we must start to respect our women, be it our wives, be it our girlfriends, and we therefore have no right to treat them as if we own them. So I think it's a good move, and I hope it succeeds.
There's one hand which has been up there for a long time, right in the center on the right side. Blue shirt, full sleeves, yes.
Sir, using terms like nonsensical to describe well-considered decision of the Apex Court on Armed Forces Special Powers Act, is it appropriate? In my personal opinion, the well-considered decision of the Supreme Court is far more wise, just, and fair, and doing so in a one-way talk rather than...
We got your
in
question.
debate. Just one sentence, madam.
Let me tell you one thing, that every one of us has a right to criticize a judgment. We don't criticize judges. And I genuinely believe that judgment of the Supreme Court is an extremely retrograde step in a vibrant democracy like ours.
Not banning polygamy,
No, thank you.
unilateral triple talaq is not just failure of legislature but also of apex court. Your comments, please. Thank you.
I see one hand at the back in the middle there. Yes, the gentleman with the spectacles, maroon shirt. No, behind you, sir.
That's a dark maroon shirt.
Sir.
That's a dark maroon.
Dark maroon shirt, yes.
Hello. Sir, we are forgetting the philosophy of our constitution and we are not ready to speak out. So
Can you speak a little louder, please? You're not very clear. Keep the mic a little away.
we are forgetting the philosophy of our constitution and we are not ready to speak out. So what is the way forward for us?
Well, you must realize that there are limitations in law about speaking out. But objective criticism, not subjective. Objective criticism is not any violation of any law. And everybody therefore has a right to express opinion, criticize opinions, criticize actions. And you can do it in myriad ways. You can, write articles in newspapers or magazines. You can write or post on Facebook. Of course, you will get as many hate mails as you wish. I get them all the time. And my good friend Prashant Bhushan virtually gets about 1,000 of them a day. So, but that's all right. It's always a welcome. I have no grievance about it.
We have a lady here.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is this. You've definitely spoken about Muslims and minorities. There are loads of tribals who face a lot of problem regarding fundamental rights, and there is blatant blow on on their fundamental rights and their directive principles of state policy. So isn't there anything that could be done about them? I mean, they come out in public to fight for their rights. They are termed as anti-nationals or Naxalites or Maoists.
Now, I did suggest, in fact, that there are 8% scheduled tribes, and their rights are very seriously threatened all across the country, particularly on account of development of industries in tribal areas. There is a huge conflict between the tribal communities who really have, rights and the industry's desire to develop those areas, particularly for mining and other projects. Perhaps you may be knowing, but even in countries like United States of America, the Red Indians have been given absolute right in respect of their preservations, their areas, and even the federal government's writ does not run there. So even taxes cannot be levied and collected in those areas which are specially earmarked for the development of the Red Indian community. We unfortunately have not been able to do that. We have some, silly rules and regulations to develop them, but still their culture is under attack. And yes, Naxalism, of course, is a separate issue. It is an expression of, I think, lack of faith on the part of a sizable section of society where fruits of development have not reached. And one of the biggest challenges I would perhaps like to tell you is the failure of the state and the judicial system to stop indiscriminate acquisition of lands for industry. Because I am pro-development, please don't misunderstand me, because I don't think agriculture alone can support a billion-plus population. But it is really naive for us to think that we must only acquire fertile agricultural lands to set up projects for, large corporates in this country. We should be very conscious of this. Even if we do we should tell industry that you go and buy them at market price. I can tell you one thing, that for 65 years, the compensation that farmers have received from the government and justified by the courts is not even pittance. And this is where I asked once, and you will be shocked, and this happened in a debate where I was arguing a very serious issue of acquisition of land in Bangalore. And I asked judges, and they were little taken back. I said, have you ever come across an acquisition case where land belonging to an MLA or an IAS officer or a judge has been acquired? The answer is no. So I said, tomorrow supposing my legal practice is acquired and I am given a pittance, will I be able to survive? And judges had no answer to that. But they still justified the acquisition. So it's like that. It is a big challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. You can see how many hands have gone up, and I've received large number of questions, but we have to close the session. I'll take just one question from there, and I will pass on all these questions to Mr. Dave, and I'm sure there'll be some way of answering them. One last question from this gentleman here. We have another session straight away.
Mr. Dave, you talked about constitutional rights, I'm right here. So we all know that right to justice is a right which is a fundamental right. The problem is when that justice gets delayed, which leads to circumvention, which leads to the fact that rights are not honored. Can constitutionally it be argued that that the fundamental right should not be a right to justice, but right to timely and speedy justice? Will that be tenable, and can that be argued?
Can you repeat it a little, because the audio is not very clear.
I am saying that the right to justice is a fundamental right. All of us enjoy it. The reason why a lot of these rights are violated upon is because the justice is not given to us on time, and there's a lot of delaying tactics which are used by the people in power. Can the right be argued for right of speedy and timely justice? And can that be constitutionally valid?
Yeah, I agree that the failure of the judicial system, in fact, there are two institutions which need to be, watched with microscopic eyes. One is the judiciary and the other is the armed forces. Both have their shortcomings. They may have their strengths, but both have their serious shortcomings. And judiciary, I can tell you one thing, has failed miserably in living up to the, challenging times of the society. This delay is inexcusable. And for example, take the challenge to the National Judicial Commission Act. And this debate was heard by the Supreme Court, 5 justices, for it began in March, over almost 4 months. And they spent more than 30 working days hearing the arguments. Still today, we are in October, the judgment has not come. I genuinely feel, I did argue, on behalf of the Supreme Court Bar Association, and it took me 2 hours to finish my arguments. So, it is a judiciary has to really learn a lot. But the other point is that the executive hates judiciary. And as a result of that, the executive is not willing to give the resources to the judiciary. So today, the strength of judiciary that you have, the infrastructure, is perhaps 1/4 of what we actually need. So, we have in Supreme Court almost 75,000 matters coming up every year. And we have 29 judges today. United States Supreme Court gets about 200 matters a year, and 9 justices decide them. So it's that. It's a big challenge, and it's a diabolical issue. I don't think it would be resolved for a long, long time. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dave.
Thank you very, very much once again to all of you.